Our first session features Aaron Goldblum, product manager at Mara, presenting enterprise-grade security tokens on Bitcoin. He will discuss how Bitcoin sidechains are being leveraged for tokenizing traditional assets. Please welcome Aaron.
You too. Apologies for the timing mix-up. As you guys can tell, I'm indeed not the first presenter. A little bit of a mix-up with the time zones here, but yeah. By way of background, today I'll be doing a short demo of our platform. But before I do that, I'll introduce myself. So Aaron Goldblum, product manager at Mara. As you guys may or may not know, Mara, formerly known as Marathon Digital Holdings, is the largest publicly traded Bitcoin mining company in North America. So you may be thinking, this is a tokenization summit. Why are we here talking about Bitcoin mining? Well, there's a few reasons for that. My team specifically is focused on expanding the overall utility of the Bitcoin blockchain. So what can we do in order to, enhance the transaction volume, bring a little utility back to the Bitcoin blockchain? And that comes in the form of Bitcoin sidechains, and there are many great ones out there, and more so consumer and enterprise applications built on those sidechains. And what better apps to develop for consumers and enterprises in the current stage than real-world asset tokenization platforms? So my team has developed a platform called Avant, which is a real-world asset tokenization issuance portal, investment platform, marketplace, and Bitcoin collateralization. It sort of does all things in one. You can think of it as a securitized mixed with Aave, but on a Bitcoin sidechain. So I'll go ahead and do a short demo today and then show you guys how the platform works. It's currently in its pilot stage, so it's piloting right now with a 1.65 million US$ fund. We're actually tokenizing 750 whiskey barrels that make up this fund. And then, of course, we're moving towards other asset classes like mineral mines, real estate. The site is actually quite asset agnostic. So I'll share my screen here and do a quick presentation. Okay, so this is a demo that we gave about a month ago in Salt Lake City, talking about Avant, the platform. So to start, I think a lot of the other panelists and speakers today covered this, in a pretty coherent way. But real-world asset tokenization or security token offerings remain quite niche, right? Progress has been quite slow, whether that be because a lack of education or a lack of understanding of the overall technology. There are perhaps a lot more issuances than there are investors. There are regulatory issues, depending on your geography. In the United States, they haven't quite, put out legislation that makes it very clear what you can and can't do from a blockchain tokenization standpoint for real-world assets. And there's little experimentation right now beyond treasuries that have really caught mainstream. There's a lot of these really great use cases that were spoken about today, like real estate, private equity, and many other, even collectibles. However, there's little interest in the market that remains. And of course, the lack of compliance frameworks makes it a little bit difficult to experiment in this space as well. However, the benefits are quite clear. There are fewer intermediaries when it comes to real-world asset tokenization, which means you can rely on the atomic settlement that blockchains are known for without having to go through intermediaries that perhaps take a fee. So if you're raising private equity, atomic settlement's really great because you don't have to worry about working with the banks, and you don't have to worry about T+3, T+ however long it takes to raise money and actually settle those dollars into your bank account for private real estate like REITs and private equity for venture funding and whatnot. So the atomic settlement, as well as the peer-to-peer transfer for alternative asset transfer, is quite profound and quite the benefit for real-world asset tokenization over traditional fundraising, which allows for greater accessibility and an overall diverse capital pool, whether it be automated capital calls, utilization of smart contracts to allow for a more streamlined process for issuing and managing assets on a blockchain. So at Mara, or rather at Avant, we want to change that. We're creating a reliable technology, leveraging Vertalo for this specific pilot for our transfer agents. We want to make sure that everything's being done in a compliant way. And of course, we're settling all this data on a Bitcoin sidechain, which in turn settles it onto Bitcoin at the end of the day. We're leveraging the fact that Mara is a publicly traded, Bitcoin mining company. We have a great access to enterprise grade issuers and investors. So, we have a whole team that does investor relations and they're interested in the crypto world broadly. So we're able to share insights and test this technology on perhaps what works and what doesn't work, what assets are of interest and what are not of interest. And of course, we can be a little bit more we can filter in a more of a profound way about what assets we want issued and who those issuers can actually be. There's also an element of targeting novel audiences. So like I stated, recruiting issuers not from the crypto space, not only from real estate, not only from this asset class, but diversifying into traditional industries like real estate, but also many others. And of course, targeting investors beyond Web3. So creating a platform that allows investors that aren't already onboarded onto the blockchain side of things to access the platform and understand it in the way that they would understand a Fidelity platform or a Schwab. So the result of all these goals and all this market research is Avant. You can do in its current state, in its pilot state, 3 things on Avant. You can issue an asset, which is basically a KYC AML, onboarding experience that's quite seamless for issuers and investors, which allows for a digital first fundraise experience. So I'll be showing the actual demo flow, but basically if you're an issuer that wants to invest or rather issue an asset onto the Avant platform, you give your information about yourself, about your, who owns the asset, and of course about the asset. And there's a decentralized manner in which these assets and these issuers are vetted to ensure that compliance is taking place from an SEC standpoint, or if it's abroad, then of course the other geographies legislation. There's also an element of investor management. So there's a comprehensive marketplace and asset portfolio and a digital wallet. So because it's on a Bitcoin sidechain, perhaps you may be thinking, well, I don't have a wallet on this Bitcoin sidechain. I've never accessed it before. What's the onboarding going to look like? There's none of that. Really, you just create an account on Avant and it intuitively creates a non-custodial wallet for you. It allows you to track in your portfolio, and all you need is an email and password, signing up for any like Web2 platform. That's basically the same onboarding experience for Avant, but the platform actually does create a Web3 experience on the back end. As stated, everything's blockchain backed, so immutable, right? Immutable record keeping and automation and transparency for peace of mind. So for those who aren't, Web3 native, they don't have to worry about what if I lose my keys, right? What if I don't understand a non-custodial wallet? That doesn't matter. However, if you are, Web3 native and you do want access to your wallet, you want to see your transactions on the Block Explorer, that's also, of course, available for you. A little bit more background about what my team specifically does. Like I said, Mara is, we do many things, but Bitcoin mining is our bread and butter, right? Turning energy to economic value, and that economic value for the most part is Bitcoin. So leveraging digital asset compute to support the energy transformation. This is a little outdated. I believe our market cap's closer to 8 billion today, and we have around 30,000 Bitcoin on our balance sheet, which is quite the HODL strategy. My team specifically is leveraging layer 2 sidechains to extend the overall capabilities of Bitcoin. So not only are we a sidechain ecosystem, we're also an app studio. And of course, Avant is the app that we're focusing on currently. However, we've piloted many different applications on Bitcoin sidechains like payments and loyalty platforms. For Talo, a little bit about them, they're a registered transfer agent that allow us to make transfers of these digital assets in a compliant manner. And they also help out with our cap table management. A little bit about our technology, right? As stated, you can be on board as an investor or an issuer. is a simple web interface that's very, similar to any Web 2 interface that you would sign up for, like a social media platform. And then you can access the front end and tokenization and investment platform. Of course, the exchange of data is handled via an API for cap table management and compliant transfer of these assets. And Vertalo mixed with the Avant platform settle transactions and tokenize on the Bitcoin sidechain known as Alice, but it is Bitcoin sidechain agnostic. And of course, all of the data that's taking place or that's entered onto the Bitcoin sidechain is eventually settled onto the Bitcoin network. So you might be asking why Bitcoin? There's so many other great chains out there that perhaps are much more programmable. Well, it's reliable. It's been around for about 16 years now. Like I said, Bitcoin mining is our bread and butter. So we know that proof of work is backed by tangible compute, and we touch that tangible compute on a daily basis. And it is a globally distributed ledger and a highly recognizable brand. So perhaps a chain that's only been around for 5 years will onboard perhaps institutional investors that are or rather, I should say institutional investors or even retail investors might be more comfortable with the name Bitcoin as opposed to chains that they, have never heard of before for settling their data, which allows for a much larger investor base. As stated, this is a little bit outdated, but the market cap of Bitcoin now is closer to 2 trillion, which allows for a very large decentralized finance opportunity on Bitcoin, which right now doesn't quite exist. Now, obviously, there's some issues with the Bitcoin main chain because it's quite slow. The utility is not quite there, and it's more of a store of value to invest in Bitcoin and in Bitcoin broadly. That's why side chains can allow for much faster settlement and much cheaper fees. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a video now. Just a short video of our platform. And I can speak through it as well. Okay, so right now you are looking at a demo of the Avant platform. Now, to start from an issuer standpoint, there's an element of asset configuration, and this goes hand in hand with the actual onboarding of the issuer themselves. So, of course, there's a thorough background check as the issuer lists, in this case, the details of a whiskey asset by describing the barrels, providing specific commercial parameters, and eventually publishing the asset onto the platform itself. The issuer shares all of this data with the eventual investor. So this can all be changed based on the specific asset. But of course, here we're talking about Kentucky grade whiskey barrels. And all of this data is shared via API to our transfer agent and, of course, on the Bitcoin blockchain itself, providing details about the actual value of the fund. In this case, it's 1.65 million US dollars, legal disclaimer, and any data that the issuer feels is necessary, like pro formas or offering memorandums. And you can place as many pieces of data you'd like. And then, of course, sharing the admin experience with other members of your team or other asset owners. And now you can check the details about the asset. Of course, here we're talking about a whiskey barrel, 750 of them at $2,200 each. Some details about the asset itself, the ability to re-download all of your documents. And then you go ahead and publish. And what's happening here is On the back end, there is a check from a compliance standpoint that the asset is indeed compliant with the SEC, that the issuers have a thorough background check, and all of this is taking place over a pretty manual experience, but of course it needs to be done in a compliant way. And you'll probably see here it's done, in about 4 seconds, but it takes, about a day to ensure that everything is set in stone about this asset and the asset issuers. Now moving on to the investor experience. So now that the issuer has accepted the, investment offer and the whiskey shares are issued on the open market and the data has been passed through, an investor can begin their onboarding. To do so, they go onto the marketplace and they can browse the Avant marketplace. Of course, the only asset on the marketplace right now is the asset that was just issued, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Understand exactly what was just provided by the issuer there, completely transparent, all the data that was okayed by the transfer agent and all the back-end compliance as well. And the ability, of course, to download all the data. Now, the investor can state the amount of barrels that they want. So in this case, we have a whiskey whale that wants to buy 50 barrels at $2,200 each. So they're going to go ahead and invest. They're going to provide their information so that we can contact them with any updates about the status of their investment. Along with this, they'll be going through, depending on, this is specifically a Reg D 506C, so there will be a third-party accreditation check. But depending on the asset, we can make it self-attestation, depending on if it's Reg CF, then you don't need to be an accredited investor. It's very flexible in that way. There's also an element of signing documents, which isn't included in this demo. And then, of course, the payment process is not included in this demo as well. But those are two important parts that are included in the pilot itself. So the investor has now passed mandatory KYC AML and accreditation status. And the investor, although it wasn't shown, would sign all the documents and complete payment. Now the issuer can go in and see, oh, look, someone is interested in purchasing 50 barrels. And the issuer will have the insight of, has the transfer agent okayed this transfer? Has the third-party accreditation check taken place? Have the documents been signed? And have I received payment? If so, then the issuer will go ahead and mint the token. And a digital twin of the ownership shares are now minted on a Bitcoin sidechain. And of course, the ownership records are settled to Bitcoin layer 2, and in turn Bitcoin. And investors can go ahead and see exactly where their tokens are via their Avant wallet. And here's just a standard block explorer to show exactly the transaction that has taken place. And as stated, this right here is a non-custodial wallet. So it might not look like it, but the onboarding experience is quite streamlined, and the user experience is also quite streamlined as well. So this looks like a standard Web 2 platform, but it is indeed a non-custodial wallet. And that's the end of the demo. Thanks so much, guys, for listening, and happy to answer any questions.